we live? Can you folks hear me? Brian, Carolyn, how are you guys doing? Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want to talk about gas prices. Hi, can you guys hear me? Can you see me? Am I live? Awesome. Give it a minute, let some people come in. Hello, Charles. Okay, Joe, we're going live on Substack. Hi, sister. How are you doing? Hello, C. Mayor. Thank you guys for coming in. Hi, Russell. Michael, how are you guys doing? It's really nice today. It's so nice outside. Hello, Reed. We're going to get started here in just a second. What the hell is going on? This is so dumb. Yeah. How's everyone doing today? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. 50 degrees in Metro Detroit. Lovely day. I think it's like 75 here. It's like 75 degrees here. Thank you, Flower. All right, are we back? Are we back? Finally, we have a little technical difficulties on Substack. Okay, let's get started. Let's get started. Welcome. Welcome to That's Not a Thing. News, politics, energy, mostly energy. I should have started with energy. It's energy, news, and politics. And then I take your questions. I'm live on YouTube. If you guys want to join me on YouTube, if I don't know what the chat will look like here, you can follow me here, ask questions. I'll be happy to answer them. I am on both platforms, so if I miss, ask again, or maybe the chat will be slower on YouTube. But hello, Todd. Good afternoon. Trump wants to restart the Keystone. Yeah, I'm about to cover that. I'm about to cover that. Jill cannot mod here. Well, I guess just join us back on YouTube, Jill, if you can't mod. Or do I need to do something? Dude, I can invite you to join. I can invite you to join. Thank you, Martha. Hi, Bill. How are you? All right. Today, gas prices are holding steady around $3.14 a gallon. That's on the national average. Anybody know where the lowest gas prices in the United States are? I'll cancel that. Lowest gas prices in the United States. Mississippi at $2.66 a gallon, if you want to go to Mississippi, right? If you want to go to Mississippi. Once again, as usual, highest gas prices in the United States, California, $4.84 a gallon. Man, oil was down at, 1.5–2% today. Last time I looked, it was around $69. That was after a report came out that the U.S. consumer confidence is down to a 3.5-year low. That's not good. That's not good. Also, there was a report put out by Bloomberg that has not been sourced or verified that OPEC Plus was going to agree to restore some old production cuts. That could be weighing on prices. But that oil production increase would only be 150,000 barrels a day, which is nothing, right? That is about 1/1000th of the total oil consumption in the world on a daily basis. So $150,000 or 150,000 barrels would basically do nothing. But OPEC Plus has not come out and verified that. That's just what Bloomberg is reporting. So we'll see. And we're waiting on data from the API and the EIA. Natural gas, when I looked earlier, it was like 401, and then 20 minutes later, it had jumped up to 411. A lot of trading activity. Not sure what caused the jump. The inventory report's still a couple of days out. So natural gas up to 411 today. Donald Trump says he wants the Keystone XL pipeline to come back. He wants to be built. He's pledged easier approvals and a more streamlined process. But Southwell Energy, the spinoff from TC Energy, the company that normally or originally was building the Keystone XL, has said, no thanks, we're good. No thanks, we're good. So if Donald Trump wants the Keystone XL to be built, he's going to have to go somewhere else. And good luck. Good luck convincing someone to build a pipeline when you're pretty hostile towards their country. Good luck with that. That's typically not a good idea. And one of today's things that are not a thing, Donald Trump came out and said that the United States was last in education and that we spend more money on a pure per pupil basis than any other country in the world. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. That's his justification for trying to get rid of the Department of Education. Actually, the United States is 6th in reading, 13th in science, and 28th in math. We do have a couple of countries in front of us in spending, and that's Norway and Luxembourg. A weird thing that I stumbled upon when I was looking that up to see exactly where we ranked in education, because I knew he was wrong about that, but I stumbled upon something else. from the NAEP, which is the National Association for Education Progress. In 2019, pre-COVID, right? 2019, pre-COVID, and they're studying 4th grade and 8th grade education, their scores basically. In 2019, blue states basically led red states in every category. Blue and purple states, both, right? Led red states in about every category. 2024, that's completely flipped. In 2024, that's completely flipped. Now, red and purple states pretty much lead blue states in every category. Why is that? And what they have found is that the states that had the longest school closures and shutdowns for COVID are the ones performing the worst today in 2024. I found that very interesting. Trump administration just yesterday issued new sanctions on Iranian oil, specifically on fleets that transport oil around the world, called shadow fleets, right? Targeting tankers, logistics companies such as that. And when that announcement was initially made, we had a bump in oil prices. Then the consumer confidence numbers came out and wiped all of that out pretty quick. Tuesday, the Supreme Court threw out the murder conviction and death penalty for Richard Glossip, an Oklahoma man who was found guilty in the murder of a motel owner, but has steadfastly maintained his innocence and averted multiple attempts by the state to execute him. That's right here in my home state. Glossip's wife, Lee, called the decision an answered prayer, and apparently the prosecutor's decision to allow a key witness to give testimony that they knew to be false violated Glossip's constitutional right to a fair trial. This is what the Supreme Court justices ruled. This was in a rare alliance with lawyers and the state's Republican Attorney General in support of a new day in court for Glossip. Sonia Sotomayor wrote for the 5 justices. Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissented, voting to uphold the conviction and the execution of the individual. That's not at all surprising. Amy Coney Barrett joined the other justices in overturning. Thomas wrote that the majority had cast aside the interests of victim Barry Van Treese's family. The victim's relatives had told the High Court that they wanted to see Glossip executed. Wow. I guess I have to see with that. We'll have to see what happens with that. Glossip has maintained his innocence for 27 years. He will not be given the chance to have, or he will be given the chance to have a fair trial that he's always been denied. He was sentenced to death in a 1997 killing in Oklahoma City of Van Treese, his former boss, and what prosecutors have alleged was a murder-for-hire scheme. Another man, Justin Sneed, admitted robbing Van Treese and beating him to death with a baseball bat, but testified he only did so after Glossip promised to pay him $10,000. Wow. Prosecutors knew that this testimony was a lie and withheld it from the defense. Oh, man. Fantastic. Fantastic. Why would someone lie on a death penalty case? So odd. Glossip has had execution dates set 9 times. He has eaten 3 last meals and has been married twice. He's been married twice while awaiting his execution. All right. Yeah. Married twice. I love it. Love it. There's nothing I love more than being engaged while on death row. That's got to be the greatest thing ever. Gotta be the greatest thing ever. A new document undercuts Donald Trump's administration's denial about a $400 million Tesla deal. Wow. The controversy started in a very Washington way as a line item in a government spreadsheet buried on the State's Department website. It appears the State Department was taking steps to award Elon Musk's Tesla a $400 million government contract to buy armored electric vehicles to securely transport diplomats. The move was actually set in motion through a lucrative contract to a company controlled by a high-profile ally of President Trump. Wow. This contract originally began under the Biden administration for $483,000, not $400 million. So it appears the contract was altered in the State Department and changed from $483,000 to $400 million. Wow. Former Biden White House officials with the State Department says steps taken to advance $400 million worth of government business to Tesla appears to be intentional. Very unlikely it was a clerical error. Likely someone who was new to the State Department who decided, okay, we're going to do this. With Tesla, a total budget of $483,000 had been approved to buy light-duty EVs as possible State Department vehicles. That plan was moving forward as recently as November 2024. They're not doing that now. Yeah, they're not doing any of that now. So I don't know how exactly that was uncovered, but that looks a little shady. That looks a little shady. What do you think? Yeah, that is a heck of a contract change for sure. Heck of a contract change before. So, how's everyone doing today? It is nice. It is like 75 degrees here at my house. Lauren on Substack, thank you. Kleptocracy. You know, it's anytime you have to learn new words with a new administration, that's kind of scary, right? Like if you have to learn new words, that's a problem. I don't like learning new words. Not a fan. Not a fan of learning new words at all. This chat is a little. This chat on Substack's a little janky. Tesla stock is tanking 62 degrees in St. Augustine. This is the kind of the portion of the show where we start the Q&A session where we just have discussion. Please feel free to ask questions. I will answer them the best I can. Bill says, I had to divorce my first wife. She was too much like Trump. She thought that a Big Mac and a KFC were a gourmet meal. Well, I really don't know how to respond to that, Bill. Better Big Macs and KFC than $100 ribeye steaks, right? Oh man. Price of gas in Fort Lauderdale was $3.20. Cheap date, yes, cheap dates. I watched a kid drink a quart of oil at a party once, and he lived. He's still alive. Can I explain how? Yeah, he passed it apparently. I mean, he passed it, right? You know, what can I say? The kid's got a strong gut, you know. Oil in itself is not deadly poisonous. There's certainly an amount you know shouldn't drink, but are there variations in features of natural gas deposits similar to oil? Yeah, natural gas does have variations. It's not as significant as oil. When you're talking about light, sweet crude or heavy sour crude, it's not that much different. Like, you know, when you're talking about specific gravities of crude, you know, being lower than 30 degrees of specific gravity or higher than 45 degrees, those differences in crude oil are vast, right? The differences in natural gas will be pretty much slight. You know, the amount of propane, butane, ethane, all that stuff that exists in the gas. Basically, the parts per million of it, or the percentage of each hydrocarbon that exists in the gas can vary slightly. It doesn't change the gas a lot, though. It can alter the flash point a little bit. It can alter the energy density a little bit. And your gas is tested, right? So, we have gas wells. When we bring a gas well online, the gas is tested, and what we receive, per cubic foot for our gas is basically based on the quality of the gas, right? So there is differences in natural gas, but it's not as much as oil. They're not vastly different. Like oil can be vastly different. He eats every lunar moth he sees. Well, all right. I don't know what a lunar moth is. I'm not sure what a lunar moth is. Luis Gonzalez. Hi, Luis. Matt, your comments are great, and I enjoy how you educate those know-all guys out there. Thank you, Luis. I have read that Trump is now promoting his energy initiatives. Is that drilling, and where? Here's the thing. It doesn't matter. Donald Trump wanting to drill more matters about as much as Joe Biden wanting to drill less. It doesn't matter. Oil companies will drill when they can make money drilling. Period. Regardless of what Donald Trump says, regardless of what Joe Biden says, regardless of what your favorite news channel tells you. These are businesses that do what they do to make money. And when the money's good, they'll do more of it. And when the money's not, they'll do less of it. Right? It's just like anything else. There is not going to be one single well drilled in this country because Donald Trump said so. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. Thanks for the question, Calvin. Nick says, living in an oil town, I think I know an okay amount about oil and gas. Then I come here and realize that I've had the book upside down the whole time. Thank you, Nick. 80 people on Substack. 80 people on Substack. Thanks for joining me today. Yes, hello, Bill. If you have a question regarding oil and gas or any other kind of energy, please feel free to ask in the chat. I'll be happy to answer. What else is in the news today? What else? Yeah. Don't forget to like and share the live. I'm not exactly sure what that wrench is doing. I'm not sure what you need that wrench for. Is that just your little moderator emoji thing? Rick Divine says RBOB $1.97 today, down 4 cents. Yeah, that will be very temporary. With these warm temperatures moving in, gas prices are about to pop off. Gas prices are about to pop off. We're going to see a little decline in gas prices. They started, a penny the other day, another penny yesterday. I've told you guys before how cold weather, snow, all that kind of stuff can drive down demand for short periods of time. That's kind of what we're seeing right now with gas prices in this little cycle right now. Conversely, a few days of really warm weather across the country will do the exact opposite that a few days of really cold weather will do, right? So don't expect to see, any drop in gas prices being sustained for more than a few days. I was watching Landman, and in it they kept talking about a sweet spot for the price of oil per barrel that needed to be maintained. Is that true? It's pretty much true, but that sweet spot is different for a lot of companies, right? You know, there's companies out there that can do fine at $40 oil, and there's other companies out there that need it to be 70, right? It's every business is structured differently. They have different contracts. Some businesses are a lot better than what they do at others. So the break-even price, plus, how much are you paying in royalties to mineral owners? Chevron owns the vast majority of all the minerals in West Texas. They didn't lease, they bought. And what that means is they don't have to pay a royalty. They don't have to pay a 15, 17, 20% royalty. They get to keep all that money. So their break-even cost is much lower than companies that have to pay, say, a 20% royalty to landowners, right? So it varies differently, but there is absolutely a sweet spot, and it is around $70. It is around $70. You start getting down into the 60s, mid 60s, people start getting nervous. They back up a little bit and like, yeah, let's hold on. Let's hold on, right? In April of 2020, when crude oil futures traded negative, could President Trump have taken delivery on those contracts and put them in the SPR? He, probably could have, but he missed it. Like the oil futures turning negative, like you literally needed to be there ready to trade to take advantage of that. Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, he likely wouldn't have got it for a negative price. But any price he would have got it at, if it would have meant an outlay and expenditures would have had to have been approved through Congress, and Congress was not going to approve any of that. I don't think, no matter how cheap it was. 600 employees fired from Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. Yeah, I saw that. What would apply gallon of regular gasoline if we factored in tax breaks and subsidies? Do you mean what would gas be without tax breaks? Thank you, Mr. Cantabrigan. Thank you for that. Hello, Pito from Zapata. So if you're wanting to know what gas prices would be if there were no tax breaks or subsidies for the oil and gas industry, if that's the question, that's not a question that can be answered. Then I would have to be able to predict how much total oil production we would have in the United States. I would have to be able to predict how much refining capacity we would have. Like, you might as well ask me what's at the other end of a black hole, right? If that's what you're asking me. Nobody can answer that question. Now, if you want to know what gas prices would be without taxes, without state and federal taxes, that's pretty easy. Depends on what state you're in. But shorten it to Cantab. Okay. Like a bridge. Canabridge. Thank you so much for subscribing, Canabridge. Littleton, New Hampshire gas, $2.99 a gallon. It's about $2.79 where I live, which is right at the state average. Right at the state average. A pencil does not work to scroll the chat, by the way. I should be outside. I really should. Marie, thank you for the question, Marie. Why is petrol more expensive in California? I never fully understood what people say here regarding taxes, etc. So, Marie, happy to answer that question. It's multiple answers as to why gasoline is more expensive in California. So, first of all, right off the bat, California uses its own blend of clean burning fuels that most of the rest of the country does not use at all, right? So, there's some places that use it, but California is really out there kind of on a energy island all by itself. It's geographically blocked with Rocky Mountains. And they use their own special kind of fuel, which they have to refine in their state, right? So California doesn't have access. California does not have access to the fuel supply for the rest of the country because they have their own clean burning fuel that they use. In addition to that, California has lost dozens and dozens and dozens of refineries in their state. Some just aged out and got old and closed down. They've lost quite a few refineries due to just an impossible regulatory environment to operate in the state of California. The state of California makes it really hard for refiners to operate in their state. They're always passing legislation to make it more and more difficult. And so refiners are just leaving. And California is basically reliant on their own state to provide their gasoline for them. And then in addition to that, they also provide some gasoline for a couple of neighboring states like Nevada and Arizona, right? So you have a lot of taxes, a lot of taxes. You have the clean burning fuel, which is more expensive than regular reformulated blend. You have limited supply due to the fact that you've isolated yourself from the rest of the country from inventory. And just all those things together add up to high gas prices. You know, gas prices in California are over $2 a gallon higher than several other states in the United States. And it's because of their policies. It's because of their policies and their regulations. So thank you for the question. Great question. Will oil CEOs bend if Trump demands more drilling? And if so, which is better? No, Calvin, oil CEOs are not going to bend. Nobody gets to make those decisions unilaterally, especially in big oil. They're not going to bend. They're not going to bend. Those shareholders, they need those shareholders, and they're going to be there forever. Donald Trump's not. And so the United States, oil companies in the United States, they're not going to do anything that goes outside their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. They're not. They're not. Moody says, I noticed independent gas stations are cheaper than corporate. That's mostly true. Corporate gas stations are more expensive. They have brand recognition. People love their brands. Gasoline is no different than a pair of shoes or a pair of jeans. People love their brands. There's people that only buy Shell gas. There's people that only buy Chevron gas. There's a lot of brand loyalty. There's a lot of rewards that these larger retailers offer as well. So branded gasoline stations absolutely mark up the prices of their fuels to take advantage of their brand. If you can't charge a premium for your product, there's no point in having a brand. There's none, right? There's no point in having a brand if you can't get more for your product. If you get the same thing as everyone else for your product, you might as well just put an X and that just be your brand name, or just put generic on there or whatever, because it doesn't matter. If you're not getting any more money, doesn't matter, right? So yeah, it's absolutely true. Independent gas stations are cheaper than corporate gas stations. Will we ever see young shale formations being developed? Let me scroll back up here. Young shale play formations being developed like the fabled Green River Valley. I've touched on this before. Every basin in the United States, every shale play in the United States, they're all competing against each other. And it's one thing people don't think about. In the oil and gas industry, If you have an upstream oil and gas company, which that means you drill, produce oil, natural gas. Every other oil company is your competitor, right? Every other oil company is your competitor. You're competing for land, you're competing for drilling rights, you're competing for all kinds of stuff. So even though it's not really a retail type of business, it's a commodity business, you still have very stiff competition. But all the basins compete with each other too. And as long as the Permian Basin is as prolific as it is, that's where the investment dollars are going to go, right? It is the best play. And the people who write the checks, the investors who have all the money, they want their money going into the best play. And right now that's the Permian Basin. So with the onset of the unbelievable production and EURs in the Permian Basin, a lot of the other basins around the country kind of got left behind. If I'm sitting here and I've got $100 million to invest in something, am I going to invest in the Permian Basin, or am I going to invest in the Eagleford, or am I going to invest in Green Valley? Right? I'm going to invest in the Permian Basin. That's the highest return on investment by far. And so, all of these basins, they compete against each other. The advantage to working in a basin outside the Permian Basin is that even though your wells may not have the EURs or production value of Permian Basin wells, your cost to entry is a lot lower, right? Your cost to entry is significantly lower. So you can go to a place like the Western Anadarko Basin, Green River Valley. There's a lot of basins in the country you can go to where you can acquire acreage for $1,000, $2,000 an acre. In the Permian, you're still looking at like $50,000 an acre, depending on where you're at in the basin. So the cost to entry is much lower. But at the end of the day, it's people that have ridiculous amounts of money writing those checks anyway, and they're going to the Permian Basin. So I think as we see the Permian Basin decline, we'll start to see more activity shift to other basins that aren't as prolific. So it's all just a matter of timing. It's all just a matter of timing, how all that plays out. The public is waiting on drilling for low gas prices. Well, that's because the public, in large part, doesn't understand how most things work. They listen to politicians and the media, and then they run around wondering why they don't know anything. It's wild that everyone can agree that all politicians lie, while at the same time believing every fucking word they say. I have no idea how that works. I have no idea how that's a thing, but it's totally a thing. Only in America can everyone agree on something, but believe the complete opposite of what they actually agree on. That makes no sense. that makes no sense. Hi, Craig. Welcome to the live. Mr. Global, good news. Both National Grid and Eversource in Massachusetts are dropping their delivery prices by 10%. Oh, wow. Dropping their delivery prices. So instead of paying $400 for delivery on a natural gas bill, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, it's got to be, it's extortion. It's extortion for you to have a $600 bill and $400 of it be a delivery charge, right? So instead of charging you $400, they're going to charge you $360. They marked it up 4,000%, and now they're going to give you 10% off. Man, that is awesome. That is awesome. That's so awesome. My cousin flies A380s to Europe. He goes off the misinformation about the false crap. He puts his and his passengers' lives in ATC hands. He has nothing but great things to say about them. Well, I saw something on the news today where delivery charge was almost double that of usage. I've seen that as well. You know, uh, where I live, my delivery charge is the same every month. It's basically what they charge me to be hooked up and be turned on, right? It's like $40 or something. And when I see these utility bills and natural gas bills from around the country and people paying $400, $500, $600 for delivery, yeah, yeah, it's a scam. It's a scam. Hi, Kelly. How are you? Marie says it's a thing. Yes, it's a thing. Calvin says, just curious, we used to import Canadian oil cheaper. With tariffs, will the loss of Canadian oil affect our public prices of gas? Tariffs are not going to result in a loss of Canadian oil. We're going to continue buying Canadian oil. And if there's a tariff on it, we'll just pay the tariff. Canadian oil with a tariff is still cheaper than the alternative. So, will gas prices rise because of that? Yes, probably. Probably, you know, 10 cents a gallon, 10, 12 cents a gallon. Um, Prices will rise more due to seasonal demand coming into spring and summer. But it's going to add, 10, 12 cents a gallon. But we're still going to buy the Canadian oil. We're totally going to buy it. So the tariffs won't change that. Do you want to comment on the UN vote where the U.S. voted with Russia? Having grown up during the Cold War, nothing has shocked me more than Trump's refusal to go after Putin. I mean, yeah, this isn't the first time we've done something like that. We actually do that kind of stuff quite often, and I want to say it's part of the negotiation process. And if the United States, why is if we're trying to negotiate, and I don't know that that's true, right? I don't know if I probably would have, or not probably, I definitely would have voted with our allies in Europe, but trying to make sense of it. Maybe they didn't want to, because the vote doesn't really mean anything, right? Maybe they didn't want to harm any negotiations that are going on. I don't think the negotiations are going anywhere anyway. Personally, I don't know how you negotiate an end to something without all the parties present. That makes no sense to me. That makes no sense to me. So what percentage of refineries in the States can only process Canadian heavy crude? Zero. Zero. The percentage of refineries in the United States that can only process Canadian heavy crude is zero. Those refineries can process all kinds of crude. Those refineries can process American crude, light sweet crude, 1,000%. This whole notion that refineries in the United States, we can't refine our own oil. I don't know where this came. I'm starting to wonder if big oil, started planting time bombs of misinformation years ago. I don't know where this comes from. But there's absolutely no truth to the fact that we can't refine our own oil. That's not a thing. There's no truth that if a refinery is set up to refine heavy oil, that it can't refine light. That there's absolutely no truth to that. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. Now, if you have a refinery that is set up to only refine light oil, that refinery can't refine heavy oil. But a refinery that can refine heavy oil can absolutely refine light oil. They do it every day. Refineries that are designed to refine heavy oil refine light oil every single day, in addition to the heavy oil, right? That is a complete myth. And it's a myth that I can't seem to get through to people. People don't believe me. They're like, yeah, I've been hearing that my whole life. It must be right. No, it's not right. Speaking of that, Thursday, 2 o'clock, Robert Rapier, senior energy contributor for Forbes magazine. He's an oil and gas expert. He's also a refinery expert. He has spent his careers in refineries. He's a chemical engineer. He'll be on Thursday, and he will tell you the exact same thing I just told you. We refine cheaper, heavier oils for profit. It has nothing to do with capability. It's all about profit. If you can buy oil for $60 and you're set up to refine that oil, are you going to buy the $60 oil or are you going to buy the $75 oil? What are you going to buy? You're going to buy the $60 oil, right? Yeah. Of course you are. Of course you are. But yeah, that is a common misperception, is that we can't refine our oil. We already refine over 9 million barrels a day of our own oil, and the reason we don't refine more is because we make more money just exporting it out of the country. You know, everything we do in this country regarding energy is driven by profit. It has nothing to do with need. It has nothing to do with need. It has nothing to do with what anyone wants their gas prices to be. It has nothing to do with what, you know, it has nothing to do with any of that. It's purely profit driven. It's just like healthcare. Where do they make the most money? How do they make the most money? That's how they make their decisions, right? What is the cost difference between refining heavy oil and light oil to make products? Pennies. It's pennies per gallon, right? 3 to 5 cents. It's pennies. But you know, if you save $15 on 42 gallons, right? And then you spend an extra 5 cents per 42 gallons. What is that? $2.10. So you save $15 and then you spend an additional $2. You're ahead $13, right? You're $13 ahead with the additional cost. Greed. Yes, it's all about greed. Might not be the right place for this question, but do you know how much petroleum products are used directly for plastics? That number is currently increasing drastically, but it's still a fraction. It is still a small fraction of what we produce. We produce about 13.5 million barrels a day right now. Probably about 500,000 barrels a day, if that, is used for plastics. If that. I live in Texas. A confusing aspect of energy here is that Texas is publicly oil and gas, but we purchase tons of wind and solar. Yeah, Texas is one of the top producing states in the United States for wind and solar both. Do I have an opinion on peak oil? I get asked this all the time. I do not have an opinion on peak oil, and I'll explain why I don't have an opinion. It's because there's been 1,000 experts before me that got it wrong. And I one, we're going to see it coming. We're going to see it coming for 2 or 3 years before it happens. And two, there's nothing for me or anyone else to gain from somebody incorrectly predicting when peak oil comes, right? You know what I mean? Like nobody's ever gotten it right one time, and it's just not a thing anyone's ever gotten right. It's impossible to predict. There's far too many variables. Like maybe a supercomputer, maybe a quantum computer could figure it out. My brain doesn't have those capabilities, and historically, nobody else's brain has had those capabilities. Because as soon as you think you got everything figured out, technology throws a wrench in the whole equation, and everything, all the work you've done is destroyed. So I don't try to predict peak oil. I can tell you this: it could be in 3 to 5 years. I can also tell you this: it could be in 10. You know what I mean? Like I can't. Nobody can. And if they tell you they can, they're full of shit. Nobody can accurately predict in any realm of the universe when peak oil is going to come. With all of that being said, we will see it coming before it happens. And in addition to that, it's not really going to matter. It's not really going to matter when peak oil comes, because we're going to hit peak oil and then it's going to stay there for a while. Like we're not going to hit peak oil and then see a big V. We're not going to see oil consumption just crash after it peaks. It's going to peak and then it's going to stay there for years, and it'll decline at just a snail's pace. So from that perspective, it's not a thing that really matters. You know what I mean? It's just we're going to see it coming from a mile away. And once we hit peak oil, then the prediction will be, when are we going to drop from 105 million barrels a day of production to 103, or consumption to 100? Then more predictions will follow that. But it is an event that is not going to be near as exciting as people think it's going to be, because once we hit that peak oil number, we're just going to stay there for a long time. That we know for sure. Thank you, Kanta. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you for the question. 128 people on Substack. If you got a question, please feel free to ask it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer. What are people on Substack doing? Like, what are y'all doing today? Are y'all just hanging out at work? Um, just are you listening in? Uh, what's going on Substack? People on Substack are much different than other social media applications. You know what I'm talking about? They're much different. Lunch break. I just ate some cheese, so yeah. I, I I knocked a chunk out of my block of cheese for lunch today. That's yeah. Merck, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. How come 5 different gas stations within a 2 mile radius of me have 50-cent price disparities? There's a lot of reasons for that, but basically, different gas stations have different business models. Some gas stations are trying to drive, more traffic into the store. That's where they tend to make more money. Some gas stations are owned by a much larger or a franchise of a much larger company. Like if they're a branded gas station, they have they're often dictated to price ranges that they need to stay in. Some of those gas stations are independently owned. They'll cut their gas prices significantly to drive more people. There's a ton of reasons why they're different, but they probably all got their gas at the same place, right? But they also probably didn't pay the same price. They have contracts and things like that. But there's a lot of reasons for gas prices to be different, and there could be 100 different reasons. But it's if you go buy a T-shirt at Walmart and there's another Walmart 20 miles away, the same T-shirt's probably not going to be the same price. Everything has its own, profit center, and everything has its own expenses, right? And every business runs differently. So, good question. I get asked that quite often, but there's a guy in town giving away free gas if you pay $4 per egg, minimum 18 eggs. Wow. So that's 40. That's okay. That's $72. So you'll get free gas if you pay $72 for eggs. How much free gas do you get? Like, do you get 20 gallons? There's got to be a limit, right? Brent Craig. That's a great question, Brent. Brent Craig, Substack, wants to know, is ANWR actually a viable play considering the long-term sunk costs to establish and remediate developments? The thing about ANWR is this, okay? There's multiple things going on here. One, brand, right? Brand recognition, brand name. The big companies that can afford to go to ANWR don't want that on their brand. They don't want to be the company that went to ANWR. If Exxon goes to ANWR, there's going to be massive public outcry, okay? So brand is important to oil companies. They're trying to survive in a hostile climate changing world, right? So that's a driver. The second, another huge driver is just the cost, right? You have to commit billions of dollars to be serious at all about producing oil in ANWR. There's no infrastructure, there's no pipelines, there's absolutely nothing there. And to even drill one well, which we all know isn't a thing, you may drill 20 wells before you find a sweet spot. But to even drill one well, you're going to have to build out the entire infrastructure, including roads. So the costs are so prohibitive, and between extremely prohibitive costs and just the brand, protecting the brand image and all of that, the amount of money they would have to spend in ANWR, they can put about anywhere else and make a fortune, right? If you got to spend $8 to $10 billion to go see what's up in ANWR, because let's be honest, the reserves there are not at all proven. The reserves are not proven. We don't know what's there. I'm sure there's something there. Donald Trump says ANWR has more oil than Saudi Arabia. But Donald Trump is a dumbass, because by no stretch of the imagination, it is not even physically possible for Anwar to have the amount of oil Saudi Arabia does. Anwar is like this big, right? And Saudi Arabia is like this big. Anwar's this big. Saudi Arabia is this big. Anwar is supposed to have more oil. No, that's not a thing. It's not even possible. But if you got to lay out $8-10 billion to go do something, you know what $10 billion will buy you in the Permian? It'll buy you a shit ton of production that already exists, where you just get to take over the sales, and it'll buy you a shit ton of acreage to drill thousands of new wells. All the infrastructure's there. All you got to do is sign the paperwork and go to work. That's not a thing in Anwar. You're starting from scratch. You have to build all the infrastructure. That $8 billion estimate could easily turn into $15 billion. And you don't know how much oil is there. Like, nobody's going. It makes absolutely no sense economically for a business to go to Anwar. Now, when you look at the Willow project, which is in the National Petroleum Reserve to the west, southwest of Prudhoe Bay, that made perfect sense because the reserves were proven, the area was known, so that made sense. Anwar makes no sense. Anwar makes no sense. Hi, Jojo. Thank you for coming in. Your wife is reviving someone on the front porch. Wow. Thanks for the question, Brent. Wendy is working, multitasking, and enjoying listening. Thank you, Wendy. Because she looked at her gas bill. Oh. My neighbor's bill was $1,200. Wow. That's suspicious. Hi, Daria. $1,200 man. Thank you so much, Jojo. Thank you for your support. Have a great day. Yeah, exactly. Tell your neighbor that there's a $5,000 check on the way. It'll make her feel a lot better, or him. Hey, Rusty. Now that oil has moved below $70 per barrel, how long do you think it will have to stay there before we see significant pullback? You know, I don't think personally, I don't think the price of oil is largely driving activity right now. I think it's just everything else that's happening is going to cause people to pull back regardless of what the price of oil does, honestly. Because you have someone in office who's trying to sabotage everything you're trying to do. And so you have to bet on whether they're going to be successful or not. And maybe they will and maybe they won't. Are you willing to bet on that? Or do you just sit tight and wait, right? And I think we're definitely seeing a wait and see approach occurring. There's some pretty significant things that have not happened since Donald Trump's election. We haven't seen much change in rig counts, right? The rig count is still floating, in that range where it's been at for the last 18 months, maybe 12, 18 months. We're not seeing any change in that. We're not seeing, and you don't have to see a lot of change to notice when you get through the upper and lower barriers, right? We're not seeing that. And I understand that he's only been in office for a month. But he was elected almost 4 months ago. So it's pretty obvious at this point that companies in the United States are not running out to drill, baby, drill, right? That's pretty obvious. Another thing I've noticed last night, I was looking at the frac spread count. It's down quite significantly from a year ago. But it's fairly stable over the last few months. We're just not seeing any change in activity, and activity was already fairly slow when all of this started, right? So I don't know how much of a pullback we'll see, because the pullback in a sense has kind of already happened a little bit, right? But if we do see prices fall, much more at all, I do agree with you that we will see additional pullback. I'm just thinking we've already seen some that maybe people haven't recognized yet. We're definitely not seeing any increase in activity whatsoever. That is blatantly obvious at this point, that companies are not just, running out there and spending billions of dollars at the whims of the President of the United States. So, but obviously, if oil goes below 65, people are gonna back up a lot, because they're not gonna know how far it's gonna drop, right? What do you make of Donald Trump's tweet saying Keystone XL has to be built now, but then saying that he doesn't need anything from Canada? Exactly. I don't need anything from Canada except that pipeline. Like, I got to have that pipeline built right now. It's not going to happen. The only way that pipeline happens if all new people from Canada come in and build it. The old company has already said no. And to quote, I believe the words were something along the lines of, "We have fully moved on from the Keystone XL, and we are no longer interested in that project moving forward." Paraphrasing, but that's pretty much the quote. We have moved on. We are not interested. And that was a direct response to Donald Trump. Right? And so, even if there was some interest in moving forward with the project, it wouldn't be finished until Donald Trump was long gone out of office. James says, Canada would focus on an east-west line before the Keystone XL? Absolutely. 100%. What happens to the U.S. if we can't get imported fuels? We don't actually import a ton of fuel. We import a lot of crude. We import a little bit of natural gas, but that's just because it's easiest to do it that way, like along the borders. Um, California's number one import is Middle Eastern oil. Um, but if you're talking about Canada, if we start having a problem getting oil from Canada, which I don't foresee happening, matter of fact, I think imports of Canadian oil are going to stay exactly the same. Um, I don't think they're even going to drop off any at all. But if they were to drop off, we have about 400 million barrels in the strategic reserve. We have another 400 million barrels in storage around we have 800 million barrels of oil sitting around the country. Um, so if there was a delay in us sourcing that oil elsewhere, which would most likely be OPEC or Russia, considering Donald Trump is in office, I doubt he'd have any trouble buying oil from Russia, even though they would use that money to attack our allies. Um, if there was a gap there between delivery and all of that, we could easily supply ourselves for a little bit. That's not a big deal at all. So I wouldn't expect to see any price shocks from any of this stuff. I think prices are going to move slowly. Whether they move up or down, they're going to move slowly. I don't see any shocks to the system coming, but not super concerned about losing supplies at this point. Hi, Carol. Yeah, it's totally possible that imports of Canadian crude oil increase because I haven't looked at the price of WCS today, but if WTI is $69, then WCS has got to be, you know, it's got to be it's got to be pretty cheap right now. Hi, Carol McKellar. Good afternoon, Lily. For you folks on Substack, if you have any questions, energy related, oil and gas, or any other type of energy, type it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer. Mickey Crash, does excessive heat um, for long periods of time automatically make oil prices go up? And if so, why does it actually evaporate? So excessive heat actually makes natural gas prices go up more than it makes oil prices go up. The thing that makes oil prices go up when it's hot outside is demand. When it's hot outside, everyone is traveling, everyone's on vacation, everyone's burning a lot of fuel, and that plays a much larger role um, on oil and gas prices both than the heat itself. Now that's related to crude oil. Natural gas, burn a lot more natural gas generating electricity to cool buildings and homes and things. So really high temperatures and really cold temperatures, extreme temperatures, either way, makes natural gas prices go up. Another thing that excessive heat can cause is it can decrease your refinery utilization rate significantly. So just like a refinery has a hard time, operating when it's 10 degrees outside, it also has a hard time operating when it's 110 degrees outside. And that can drop your total your production of refined fuels, right? That can actually decrease that extreme temperatures in either way. That can make your gas prices rise. In addition to that, doesn't have a huge effect on oil prices. It can definitely make your gas prices rise. Oil doesn't evaporate as much in warm temperatures as gasoline itself does, and that's why we use a summer blend of gasoline, because it reduces evaporation in your fuel tank. If oil companies are profiting more and more every year, for the most part, should taxpayers be subsidizing them? That's up to the taxpayers, but every industry in this country is subsidized, and every industry in this country makes more profit every year. And the largest oil and gas subsidies actually go to people through home heating assistance programs and things like that. That is the vast majority of oil subsidies. It's payments made directly to people to help heat their homes, but it's counted as an oil and gas subsidy. So, personally, I think it's something that should be up to the taxpayers. If you don't subsidize oil by giving them tax breaks, they would just close up shop. If we stopped with the tax breaks for oil companies, basically what would happen eventually is we would only be left with big oil, and we wouldn't have any of the small companies to compete with them. And so you would see a massive amount of consolidation in the market. Big oil would take over everything. And then you would basically be at the mercy of big oil, right? And people focus a lot on oil industry subsidies. There's there's literally single companies in this country that receive more subsidies than the entire oil and gas industry. Boeing. Boeing gets more subsidies, significantly more subsidies than the entire oil and gas industry. Brian, I was thinking the same thing. I was actually thinking the same thing here a while back. He's reading about oil seeps off the coast of California. And couldn't we collect that one spot that gives off 6,000 to 7,000 gallons a day? I think you're talking about a spot off of Long Beach. Um, for the people that don't know, there's many places around the world where oil just seeps out of the seafloor off into the ocean, right? And there's one place, I think he's talking about the place off of Long Beach. It's about 6,000 or 7,000 gallons of oil a day, just flows out of the ground up into the ocean. And the thing is, I don't know how deep the water is there. And also, I don't know who has you have to have the rights to that oil. So if, in addition to that, in addition to that, the oil seeps in the ocean actually contribute to the environment. And because microorganisms feed off of them. And you could actually make the argument that by removing those oil seeps, you could actually harm the environment. Because microorganisms feed off of that. So I don't, could you collect that oil? That would be, I don't know if it would be cost effective. The amount of money you would have to spend to collect that oil, and I don't know who has the rights to it. But you've had oil seeping off the coast of California into the ocean for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, and it's at this point it's basically part of the environment. Microorganisms eat off of them. I don't know if it should be removed. I don't know if you upset the apple cart too much by removing it. But I absolutely thought about that myself. Is there a way to get that oil? Because look, I could park a couple of vac trucks on a barge and just float that sumbitch out there and just suck the oil right out of the water. And then, once we get it back to land, we can figure out how to separate it. 160 people on Substack. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank you for coming in, Bill. Really appreciate it. Santa Barbara, that's right. Santa Barbara, not Long Beach. Isn't it kind of odd that it's weird, right? Um, we're talking about oil flowing into the ocean, and we're having a discussion about not removing it because it might hurt the environment. Like that's a weird thing. That is so odd to me. If regulatory bodies are weakened from Elon and Trump, what effect will this have on oil companies and by connection the price of gas in the United States? I don't think I don't really think that uh, it'll have a huge impact on oil companies. I don't think they do anything any different if the regulatory environment is any different. I've worked in this industry for decades, and I've worked in it when it was the most highly regulated, and I've worked in it when it wasn't. Never changed anything we did. It never once changed anything we did because we operated by our own standards, and that's how companies operate in this industry. You have to. It's a very dangerous business, and very dangerous. And so I don't think it changes much really. I've said for a long time that you know the word regulation, it's like a four-letter word, even though it really has no impact, at least on the oil and gas industry. It probably has a lot of impact on other industries, but I'm not an expert in those industries. I know about the oil and gas industry, and companies operate by their own standards. And so unless you get into like a hyper regulatory environment like you have in California, where it actually impacts people even just operating their companies, unless you get into a situation like that, regulations don't mean much. You they really don't. And we've never existed in a hyper regulated industry across the United States when it comes to oil and gas, whether it was under Obama, Biden, whatever. And there's no difference when there's a Republican in office and regulatory regulations are eased, right? It doesn't change how anybody operates. So, hi CC, welcome to the live. I can't see how many people are in my live. I have no idea how many people are in here. Brian says, yes, I've been working for Canadian supervisors for 10 years. Yeah. We operate above OSHA standards. That is also correct. How you doing, CC? Thank you, Beth. By the way, in case you don't know, here in New England, most of your infrastructure, all the big players are Canadians. Yes, I am aware of that. Yeah. Carol McKellar, are there areas in the national parks where they want to drill? No, there's not. No oil company wants the grief of operating in a national park. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think there's any chance of that happening. And I personally am, staunchly opposed to it myself. The last thing I want to see, and here's the thing, probably 99% of the people that work in our industry would agree with me. The last thing we want to do or see is drilling rigs in national parks. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that. Just because you work in the oil and gas industry or any other energy sector doesn't mean you don't appreciate nature and you know, we're not going to be drilling in national parks. We're just not. It's not a thing. So, um, you know, even if they make it completely legal and offer the land up to be available and all that stuff, doesn't mean it's going to happen. Hello, Ryan. Irving Geschwitner, thank you for the question. Could you see American oil interests putting any kind of pressure on the Trump administration? I mean, if you mean from the perspective that they're not going to drill, yes, if that's what you mean. But they're not going to put any pressure on them I don't think they're going to try to put much pressure on them to try to prevent OPEC from producing more. I could be wrong. There's no telling what oil lobbyists are having conversations about in Washington, D.C. right now. I'm sure they're not huge fans of the idea of OPEC producing a lot more oil to drive down prices. But, I'm sure there's lobbyists up there that make a shit ton more money than we ever will, and that are currently crying about it. But I honestly, it's not going to work. That's the thing. It's not going to work. Thank you for the question, though. The beaten paths. Even Boston's huge Christmas tree comes from Nova Scotia. Yeah. Trump is going to drive a geothermal system right in the middle of Old Faithful. I mean, speaking of geothermal, Cindy Taff is someone I should have as a guest on the show. I actually used to work for Cindy at Shell Exploration. She was the president of Unconventional's Western Hemisphere. I worked for Cindy. She left Shell and she started Sage Geothermal, which is one of the nation's leading geothermal companies. And she's landing a lot of big contracts to do a lot of huge work. I should have Cindy on to kind of teach you guys about her business and how geothermal works. I can explain to you how geothermal works, but she could do it much better. She can be very specific about the things she's doing with her company. So I'm going to have to call Cindy and see if I can get her on the show. Can an oil pipeline be converted to a gas pipeline? It can, it absolutely can, and vice versa, depending on the capabilities of the pipeline, right? So typically, your gas pipelines will actually have more pressure than oil pipelines. So as long as the pipeline is rated to withstand, within a safety margin, whatever pressure they decide to apply to it, then yes, you can convert an oil pipeline to a gas pipeline and vice versa. You typically don't convert gas pipelines to oil pipelines unless you just need a small oil pipeline, unless you just don't need a lot of pipeline. But you absolutely can, yes. Will she use props like sponge daddies? I don't know. I don't know, Beth. Is OPEC talking about increasing supply? I thought they said they wouldn't. So OPEC is not going to increase supply, but according to Bloomberg, OPEC Plus, now OPEC Plus has not come out and said this, but according to Bloomberg, they believe that OPEC Plus will restore some old production cuts, which would only be 150,000 barrels of oil a day, which isn't really an increase. It's really not, because they can't control 150,000 barrels of production within their own cartel as it is. There's countries already producing more than they say they are. There's countries producing less than they say they are. So 150,000 barrels a day. If that's actually true, you know, if if it's true that OPEC Plus is going to increase oil production by 150,000 barrels a day, if that's true and that makes Donald Trump happy, that is simply further proof that Donald Trump doesn't have a clue what he's doing if he thinks 150,000 barrels a day means anything, because it doesn't. We use over 100 million barrels of oil a day. 150,000 barrels a day is, what's it going to be? 1/1000th of our consumption. Like, it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. So we'll see. I'm waiting for OPEC Plus to make that announcement if they intend to do that. I'm not going off of what Bloomberg says. I'm not. I have to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, right? But just know, if it does turn out to be true, and I actually kind of suspect it is true because it's such a small amount. You know, if Bloomberg had come out and said 500,000 barrels a day, I would have wondered. 150,000 barrels is such a small amount. It is so small. It is so small that they wouldn't even be able to prove that they're doing it. That's how small it is. So it's a number that could have been thrown out there to Donald Trump to appease him a little bit, that they don't even have to prove that they're doing because it is so small. That's insane. That's right. That's chump change. That is chump change. Jill, can we do 3? Can we do 3? Here we go. Where do I put this thing? I don't know. all the way back here. I'll put you all the way back here. Hi, TikTok. We're streaming live on YouTube, TikTok, and Substack. How are you guys doing? Thank you guys for joining today. Yes, Jill is on Substack, but you can't moderate on Substack. That's not a thing. Hey, Dubs, how you doing? PNC Bio says, I just realized in the last few days how much watching and learning from Mr. Global has ruined so many news outlets that I thought knew what they were talking about. I sort of thought channels about business and money and stuff would understand energy markets if they're going to talk about them incessantly. They're journalists. They're journalists. They don't know what they're talking about. The energy sector is so complex, and it has existed in secrecy for decades. Okay, and here's the thing: for decades, the oil and gas industry has oil companies and energy companies in general have operated in secrecy as much as possible, right? Because they operate in a very litigious environment, and they are scared to death that anything they say can result in lawsuits. So the information that they do put out is not clear, or it's false, or there's something, right? So there's all of these misperceptions and beliefs and falsehoods about the industry. And that has largely, the life of those misperceptions has been supported by the secrecy of the industry. When CNBC, or just, pick a channel, I don't know, I don't watch news. But if someone comes out and word vomits a bunch of inaccuracies, there's not anybody from the industry that's going to step up and say, hey, that's inaccurate. That's not a thing that happens. That's not a thing that happens. And like I said, that's a product of the industry, operating in secrecy for years. It just has. It's a thing. What prompted me to do it? Just reading, just looking at social media every day of my life and seeing that nobody really understands anything about how any of this works. And everything they think is what they've been fed by other people that don't understand how it works. And there's so many misperceptions, right? And so I just started telling people, no, that's not a thing, right? That's not how that works. This is how that works. And sometimes, sometimes that reflects poorly on the industry. Sometimes it doesn't, right? It's because it's just the truth. It's just, this is how it works. And I can assure you, I've sacrificed quite a bit to do this. There's a lot of people are not happy that I do this. They're not. Trust me, they're not. And I don't know why, because nothing I'm saying or doing is, going to hurt the industry or shines a huge negative light on the industry. I'm just debunking misinformation. The problem, the thing that I think they're really worried about is when something does arrive, right? Like when something does come up that they want to keep quiet, they're not going to be able to do that. I think that's the problem. because I've never said anything, about the industry that's particularly damaging in any way. I'm just telling people how shit works. But, and yeah, I've sacrificed quite a bit. But, hey, the sacrifices I have made have been returned to me with blessings twofold, right? So anytime anything negative has happened to me directly because of what I do here, it always works out a lot better in the end for me. But that's been my whole life. I don't know why. Anytime I fall down, I come back stronger. That I've always been that way. I don't. I lost a job. I lost my job with Shell because of this, and they weren't happy about it. They weren't happy at all, and which was fine with me. Shit. That's the thing about it is you know I'll just go start my own oil company. Like it's not um, the best thing, when it happened, I thought, man, this is terrible. I lost a great job, I lost a great job. And I thought, man, this is terrible. And then I was like, you know what? Fuck, I just start my own oil company. That's what I did, you know? And I'm 20 times better off now that happened. Um, so that's really the biggest thing that's happened to me. But there's quite a few people in the industry that are not a fan of me because I'm supposed to keep my mouth shut. I'm supposed to keep my mouth shut. Have I talked about restarting the Keystone Pipeline? Yes, I have talked about that. Donald Trump wants to do it. Um, they said no. That's basically. I'm gonna try to adjust this, get this looking a little better. But yeah, Donald Trump asked him to do it. They said no. It's not gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. Here's the thing: you can't like go after a country and then ask them to build you a pipeline. Um, so if you're in the live in any one of these lives, if you're on YouTube or Substack or TikTok, if you're ever the president, right? You can't attack a country and then ask them to build you a pipeline. That's not how it works. So put that in your pocket in case that day ever comes, and remember it when you get to the White House. Um, Can you project what happens if 10% tariffs are imposed on oil and gas products for consumers and businesses? Uh, well, you're going to see gas prices go up a little bit. It's not going to be massive. You will see gas prices go up in the United States, probably 10 to 12 cents a gallon. If that happens, that will occur in conjunction with seasonal demand. When we move into spring, gas prices already go up. So you may miss it, or you may think it's all due to the tariffs and not understand that some of it's due to increased demand for springtime. But if the tariffs, get implemented and all that plays out like Donald Trump says it's going to play out, it will have an impact on gas prices for sure. Hi, Jill.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. How do I change the grid?
What do you want it to?
I just want to be able to see the chat. I don't really care what it looks like. Um,
Can't, you can't see the chat?
I'm on an iPad. I can only see one line at a time.
Let me see if I can help here.
Ooh, look at you go.
Just hold on. Let me see if I can do anything. Because I should be able to do the.
Hi, Roman. How are you doing? Why would the price of oil go up if their Northern Gateway pipeline was built, taking the tar sands from Alberta to a marine depot? They wouldn't.
Can you see the chat that way?
I can, but you're so small.
I know, but we'll be all right. I'll change that thing.
The pipeline itself wouldn't have any impact on oil prices if unless it took that oil out of the country to a broader market, the pipeline wouldn't have much of an impact.
Let's try it another way. We'll try it one more way here. And then see what it does. At least it put me down in the corner. Can you see the chat?
Yeah.
Okay, no boxes, and you can see the chat.
You okay with
That's
that?
good for today.
Did the USA buy gas from Russia before the Ukraine war? We didn't buy gas. We bought some crude oil. As a matter of fact, Navy Vet says turn the laptop sideways. What does that do? Yeah, that didn't do anything, Navy. No, no, we didn't buy gas from Russia. We bought a lot of crude oil, especially under the Trump administration. During the Trump administration, purchases of crude oil from Russia got up to like I think 15-year highs. We started buying a lot more crude oil from Russia under the Trump administration. Pipelines are open and the Strategic Petroleum Reserve will be full for the first time. That's not a thing. That's not a thing. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve was completely full when Donald Trump took office. It went through a period of years where it was actually over capacity. The capacity of the SPR is 714 million barrels. At one point, there was like 735 million barrels or something in it. Like it was actually over capacity. So anyone says the SPR is going to be full for the first time, that's a complete lie. If anyone says the pipelines are open and it's full, that's a complete lie. We have not put a drop of oil in the SPR. So how this works, if we start putting oil in the SPR, you don't just open a pipeline. That's not a thing. You don't just open a pipeline. You have to purchase that oil from someone and you have to take delivery. So if we start putting oil in the SPR, what you're going to see is the Department of Energy will come out and solicit bids to purchase large quantities of oil. So they'll come out, they'll make a solicitation, and they'll say, hey, we want to purchase 5 million barrels of oil in March, right? And what they will do is they will take basically bids from companies that sell oil, right? And another thing they can do is an exchange. So an exchange is when you produce oil on federal lands in the United States, you have to pay the U.S. Treasury, specifically the Bureau of Land or Department of Interior, which oversees the Bureau of Land Management. You have to pay them a royalty, right? So, you can exchange your royalty payment in kind for oil. So basically, if the United States government says, hey, we'll take an exchange, what that means is instead of us paying you a royalty, or instead of you paying us a royalty, you can give us an equal amount of oil in value for trade, and we'll consider your royalty paid, right? So if they owe the U.S. government, $100 million, they can just give them $100 million worth of oil to stick into the SPR. So there's multiple ways to do that. The easiest way for Donald Trump to fill up the SPR, if that's what he decides to do, is to take the exchange. It's to take the exchange, because what he's going to have to do if he solicits bids to purchase the oil, he's going to have to get approval from Congress to purchase all that oil. He doesn't have to do that in the event of an exchange. So, if we get into this where he starts doing it, I think we'll likely see solicitations from the Department of Energy for exchanges. And keep in mind, if we do start filling the SPR, it's going to take years to do it. We're not going to refill the SPR in a day or a week or a month. That's not a thing, right? That's not a thing. I think at best, we can probably put about 1 million barrels a day into it. And I don't think we will, because that is just, we've never done that, is what I'm saying. We've never put 1 million barrels a day into the SPR. I think we could, but we never will, right? Well, Donald will need approval from Congress to purchase oil, because someone has to write the check. And the funds got to be released by the U.S. Treasury. He may try and get around that. He may try and get around that. Who knows? I mean, it's a possibility. Hi, Zipping. How are you? Did Trudeau cancel natural gas, or did a company back out? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I didn't realize something had been canceled. Thoughts on Keystone Pipeline? It's not going to happen. What are gas prices looking like the next couple of months? They're going to go up as we move into spring. Seasonal demand will drive gas prices up. Plus, we'll swap over to summer blend, which will also drive up gas prices. Why are refiner rack prices falling? Refiner rack prices are falling because we just went through the coldest week. One of the coldest weeks we've had in years in the United States. Cold weather, snow, things like that, they drive down demand significantly. You're going to see those rack prices rebound quickly in the coming days. So I've talked about this for a long time. Things we need to happen to drop gas prices. What we saw last week was one of the things I've talked about many times. Really cold weather, snow, ice, things that prevent people from driving, things that drive down demand will drive down gas prices. We're seeing the last week's weather play out right now with rack prices around the country. That's going to quickly reverse. Unless something else happens that drives down demand significantly, like for one thing, consumer confidence is down to a 3.5-year low. That's never good. That means people aren't buying shit, right? I have heard that the SPR can only be drained and filled so many times or the walls will collapse. It's not that it can be drained or filled so many times. It's the rate the speed or rate that it can be drained or filled, right? So when you drain the SPR, you have to do it very slowly. That's what you're talking about. And in addition to that, you have to fill it very slowly. These are salt caverns. Oil is stored underground in salt caverns, and you have to take care of the cavern, right? This system of caverns has an asset value of billions of dollars, so you don't want to fuck it up. So you can fill it and drain it we don't know how many times you can fill it and drain it. It's not about the number of times, it's about the rate at which you fill it or drain it. Hi, Makeup Madness, how are you? Do you think Trump will buy oil from Russia to tariff Canada's oil harder than the 10% he wants to now? It's a possibility. I would be surprised, but at the same time, I wouldn't put it past him. If Donald Trump buys oil from Russia, then we really know we have a serious problem. Like that would be the ultimate holy shit, right? So that would be a serious problem. 200 people on Substack, almost 300 people on TikTok, and however many people we have on YouTube, I don't know. Why isn't it stored in tanks? Because it takes a lot of tanks to store 714 million barrels of crude oil. It takes a lot of tanks. Also, it's a target, right? If our strategic petroleum reserve was to be hit, it's safe because it's underground. Having, you know, thousands of tanks holding oil on the surface of the ground that could be hit by even a domestic terrorist or, you know, anybody with bad intentions, that's not good. That's not good because, you know, if you do it right, you've only got to hit one and the rest will fall like dominoes if you do it right. So, yeah. Did Trudeau cancel the Northern Gateway or did a company pull out prior? I don't know. You know, we weren't really looking hard at what was going on in Canada when all that was going on. So I don't know if it was Trudeau. I don't know if it was other members of the government. You know, I can't answer that question. Hi, Stacy Baker. How are you? What would the cost of gas be if there were no EVs? So, you know, that's difficult to say because, you know, logic tells me that if there were no EVs and we needed that additional oil and gas on the market, that we would just be producing it. OPEC right now has 5 million barrels a day of spare capacity. What that means is within a few days they could be easily producing 5 million more barrels a day of oil, right? So, you know, if there were no EVs, you know, you could make the argument, you know, gas prices would be a lot higher. That's not necessarily true. We would just produce that much more oil to meet the demand. So you can't assume that if there were no EVs, we would be producing the same amount of oil we are now. You can't make that assumption because, you know, we meet demand. You have to meet demand, right? So would it be higher? It definitely wouldn't be cheaper. You know, how much higher would it be? I don't think it would be that much higher. You know, I think it'd probably be about the same. Are there any benefits to the new regulations in California that went into effect in January? No, there's absolutely no benefits to it. And that is what is so crazy about the new regulations. And if you're not familiar, I believe Mickey's talking about the new regulations in California that require refineries to store more gasoline to save up for when they're down for refinery maintenance, so Californians don't see sticker shock at the pump, right? When refineries go down. The thing is, you're pulling gas off the market to store it. So what's basically is going to happen is because they can't produce any more gas, is the regulations are just going to make gas prices higher all the time, but you're not going to see big spikes. It's just going to be higher all the time, but it will be lower during the periods when the spikes would have occurred because you're having to take gas off the market to store it instead of selling it. So the exact same amount of gas is going to exist and going to be consumed over a period of time. When it's sold and when it's consumed doesn't matter. Over a 1 year period of time, you're still going to produce the same amount of gas. You're still going to sell the same amount of gas. So it doesn't matter, right? You're going to pay the same amount over that year. Yeah, you may save 20 cents a gallon during periods where they're down for refinery maintenance. Okay, but you're going to pay 8 cents a gallon more for the entire year. So you don't have to pay 20 cents a gallon more for a month or 2 months, right? Does that make sense? So the new regulations don't do anything but cost refineries a shitload of money because they have to build those, they have to spend that money, and then it does nothing. It does nothing for gas prices. It is one of the dumbest pieces of legislation that I've ever seen in my life. It is literally one of the dumbest things. My 10-year-old could tell you that's not a thing, right? But it's California. They live in a different world. They think shit works that doesn't work. I feel like Gavin Newsom is a relatively intelligent person, but he constantly proves to me that he's not. He constantly proves to me that he's not. Brian says Trudeau first rejected it in 2016. How about Trump wanting to get the Keystone XL finished? It's not going to happen. Canada's already said no. We're not interested. Does Canada want to do business with us anymore? I don't know. You have to ask Canada. If I was in Canada, I would be wishing I had somewhere else to do business. But you know, they may be stuck with us. Hi, Smarty Pants. How you doing? Have you heard about Canada and China's oil agreement? That's not a thing. Canada and China does not have an oil agreement. That's not a thing. Oh man. How long? Okay, I gotta answer this. How long would Hawk last in a fight with me? In a fist fight with me? Hawk? Um, However long it took me to hit him is how long he would last. And it might take me a minute because I'm old, right? But that's how long it would last. Um, However long it take me to hit him.
That is totally not cool. Like, that is not a cool question at all.
But it's true. I have to tell the truth. I cannot tell a lie. I'm like Abraham.
The answer to it, I'm just saying the question itself is not cool.
Why isn't it cool?
Because it's not. It's not cool at all.
It's funny. Relax.
It's funny. It's funny, but it's not cool. I mean, Hawk is not here to defend himself, so.
Hawk would probably agree. I wouldn't be that concerned about it. I'm sure Hawk would say, yeah, that's probably right.
Okay.
Huh? just TD'd another hole in the ground. Congratulations.
What's the animosity between the two of them?
There is no animosity. We're friends. And he would laugh at my answer. Do you still think we've reached peak oil in the Permian Basin? I never said we reached peak oil. I said EURs are falling. We could actually produce more oil in the Permian by increasing rig count and punching more holes than we ever have, right? So you can catch up and surpass peak by simply drilling more, but that doesn't change the fact that you can drill more wells. It doesn't change the fact that each one of those wells on an average are going to produce less than they would have 3 years ago. So you can offset peaks with more drilling, right? So whether that occurs or not, because we set a record in 2023 for number of wells completed in the Permian Basin. The numbers haven't come out for 2024 yet. I don't think we broke that record in 2024, but peak oil is not defined by by the average response of every oil well in a basin. It's defined by the average overall production across the entire basin. So a simple way to put it, you could drill 100 wells one year and say, well, this is peak because the wells are producing more than they ever will. But the next year, you could drill 200 wells that produce slightly less, but your overall production will be higher, right? We're not gonna double the amount of wells we drill in the Permian Basin. But if we get into a period of high oil prices, we could drill significantly more wells that would actually offset the peak number. Trump, we don't need Canada's oil. Also, Trump, we need the Keystone XL. Yeah, what oil does he think goes into the Keystone XL if we build it, right? Does he think that oil comes from Alaska? Where does he think it comes from? Ah, Mickey, I was reading your question and then you retracted it. Yes, Donald Trump came out yesterday and asked Canada to go ahead and complete the Keystone XL. Now he wants it. He wants it like quickly. He's going to make it all good. Everything's going to be perfect. He's going to fast track everything. And Southbow, the company that is the spinoff of TC Energy, is Southbow or Southern Bow? I think it's Southbow. Anyway, they came out and said that no, we're not doing that. We've moved on. We're not interested. So it's not going to happen unless a different company comes in and decides to do it. Can you explain why drilling more won't necessarily bring down the price of our gasoline? Because all of our oil production increases are offset by OPEC decreases. OPEC is committed to keeping oil at around $70 a barrel. I believe we got under 11 million barrels a day, if I'm thinking correctly. We got under 11 million barrels a day by the time we got out of COVID. I think we got down to 10.8 or something like that. That's off the top of my head, so don't quote me on that. And so, what that means is under the Biden administration, we increased production by a little over 2.5 million barrels of oil a day. And what was OPEC's response? To decrease production by the same amount to keep oil prices high. So you continue to do that until OPEC says, okay, we've had enough, you've taken too much of our market share, we're going to crash the whole market. So the only way you can drill more to reduce gas prices is by completely collapsing the global energy market. That's the only way you can do it. You either do that and crash everything to bring down gas prices, or it doesn't happen. The Keystone was dismantled, JoJo. The whole thing would have to be built. Every landowner would have to have a new contract. There's thousands and thousands of landowners between here and Canada. Okay. Um, it'd be a huge project. It wouldn't, even if they decided to do it today, it wouldn't be finished until after Donald Trump left office. Do you follow Sal? I can't say that last word name, aka what's going on with shipping on YouTube? He follows you. He really knows his stuff about shipping. No, I hadn't heard of him. Smarty Pants says Enbridge might be interested in KXL with guarantees. Yeah, they're gonna want, anybody is gonna want a lot of guarantees. I believe the price tag for the KXL. I think that cost TC Energy, by the time it was all said and done, I think it was around $14 billion loss, something like that. So yeah, anybody that comes in is definitely going to want guarantees from the U.S. government. Hi, Amy of Texas. Good to see you on Substack. Can you explain what happened in the great oilfield crash in the 80s? Yeah, yeah. So the great crash of the early 80s, I remember very well because I was a kid. My whole family, my whole family worked in the oil and gas industry, and my whole family lost everything in that crash. Everybody lost their homes, their cars, everything. It was really bad. Um, but no, so you had the Arab oil embargo that started in the 70s, late 70s, right? They basically cut us off of a lot of oil. We picked up drilling rigs like crazy in the United States. At one point, we had over 4,000 drilling rigs operating in the United States, which is what, nearly 8 times more rigs than we're running right now. That's how many drilling rigs were operating in the United States. We started producing a ton of oil because we were cut off. We built the SPR, we started producing a ton of oil, and then OPEC said, and they turned the oil back on, and that completely crashed everything. At the time, that was by far the worst oil crash in history. As a matter of fact, we had over 20 years of low oil prices. We had over 20 years of low oil prices. What we also had was we went through an event that caused us to do things to make us less reliant on OPEC, and they sucked us right back into being more reliant on OPEC by flooding the market and crashing everything. So industry-wide in the United States, it was just a total and complete collapse of the industry. That's what happened in the 80s. I will. I'll follow Sal. Thank you, Jedi. We have several large fuel tanks on our farm. Should we refill them now? I wouldn't. I wouldn't do anything like that. I wouldn't. I wouldn't do anything extreme because look, gas prices are not going to go up that significantly for spring and summer. We're not seeing any events currently that are going to make gas prices go through the roof. And even though the possibilities are slim, we could see gas prices come down, right? So I would, if I were you, I would take a wait and see approach if I was thinking about doing something like that because um, the odds are better gas prices will fall a year over year average. I mean, they're going to go up this spring. They do it every spring. So unless you just want to save money for the spring, right? But if you're talking about long term, they're not going to go up significantly long term. This spring, they're going to go up, but they're probably going to be a little bit cheaper than last spring, but they're still going to go up, right? I would recommend taking a wait and see approach. I wouldn't run out and buy a bunch of gas. It's not going to move so much that you need to do things that drastic unless you just want to. When you're talking about crashing the market to bring down prices, are you referring to what Trump is sort of doing right now? Well, it is what he's trying to do. It is what he's trying to do. And what will corporations do when the economy crashes? They'll fire a bunch of people. They'll slow down. Oil production in the United States will drop. And as such, so here's the thing, and this is where it's going to be really bad for Americans. If Donald Trump manages to crash the oil market, Americans are really going to feel it on their utility bills. Their utility bills are going to skyrocket. And they may be saving 30 cents a gallon at the pump. That is all going to be wiped away when they open their utility bill and their electric bill is $1,000. Because a lot of the natural gas that we produce in the United States is associated natural gas from oil production in the Permian Basin. And when you start losing oil production, you start losing natural gas production. And our supplies are so tight right now in natural gas, and our demand for natural gas is rising at such a clip that any loss in production in natural gas would be catastrophic. Not for natural gas producers, they'll make a fortune. But the price of natural gas will absolutely go through the roof, and you will be paying for that on your utility bills. So, you might save, and I hope this doesn't happen, but if it does, here's what's going to happen. Here's what you're going to see on my channel in the future. You're going to see people celebrating that they saved $6 on a tank of gas. And then you're going to see those same people crying and at the payday loan place because their utility bill is $1,200. That's what you're going to see. And you're going to see me explaining that to them. You're going to see me explaining to them what is going on. And I'm also going to be explaining to them how they got what they voted for. So good luck with that. What is the best month to shop for my next natural gas contract in Ohio? My present one will expire in July. Spring and summer is the best time. Spring and summer is the best time, 100%. Any season that is mild is the best time to negotiate that. Rusty says, I was working in the 80s. It was like someone closed the tap. Wow, Rusty. Rusty, you're older than I thought you were. I was a kid. What states are affected by natural gas production? All of them. All of them, except for maybe Washington and Oregon. Washington and Oregon use a ton of hydroelectric power. But, some states are obviously impacted more by it. States in the Northeast. If you live in the Northeast, you're more likely to get your gas from Canada than the United States. But for the most part, unless you live in about one of maybe 5 states, you're impacted by natural gas, 100%. It's over 40% of the electricity generation in this country. And even if you live in an area that has a ton of renewable power, some of your electricity is still provided by natural gas. I live in an area that has one of the largest wind farms in the country. I think it's the 3rd largest wind farm in the country. And that wind farm is 20 minutes from my house, and I get none of that power. I get none of it. All of that power goes to other states. It's exported out of our state to other states because they get more money for it. L Town says I'm 57 in the 80s crash. I was newly married and had a baby on the way. It was rough. Yeah. I was 8 years old, I think, when that crash occurred, and we lost everything. We left town in an old 60, I think it was a 68 model Mustang, and moved in with some family in New Mexico. We lost everything because, as Rusty said, it was like just turning off the tap. One day you're making money hand over fist, and the next day it's all zeros with no prospects for employment anywhere because 50% of your workforce is now out of work. 312 people on the TikTok live, 234 on Substack. I don't know how many on YouTube because the screen ain't working to show me. Thank you, Ray. 351 on your screen. Do you think maybe a large increase or decrease in crude oil? Let me go find this comment. Barrel going into summer or winter? I don't think it's going to change a lot. It's going to stay within a $10 range unless something crazy happens. Thank you, everyone. I have a live goal here, snowflakes, and please gift the moderator, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric. Is the price of natural gas going up right now? Yeah, when I looked before the show started, it was $4.11 an MCF. So year over year, it's up significantly. We were below $2 this time last year. In Alberta, the dirty little secret about wind farms is there must be enough excess baseload generation capacity, natural gas and coal, to cover the wind farms when there is no wind. Yeah, that is absolutely the thing. It's not really a dirty little secret in the United States because we've been screaming that to people from the beginning. You got to have baseload power. And renewable energy is not, well, I shouldn't say renewable energy because hydroelectric power can absolutely 100% be baseload power. Wind and solar cannot be baseload power unless you have massive battery storage capabilities. And even then, it's sketchy. We stacked all of our workover rigs in a month and then went to work for the courts maintaining wells until they could be sold. Yeah. VC, Victoria, how are you doing? Victoria says baseload power was my nickname in college. The old Scott joke. Is it a bad thing if the state of California owns the refineries that are threatening to shut down? What are the negative effects? I'm not going to try to make a prediction on whether the state of California can operate a refinery. The negative effects are the state of California having, your question is the answer. You don't want your state to be doing that. You don't want state run refineries anywhere. Now, the good thing that could come out of that is the state of California will learn a lot. The bad thing that could come out of that, well, another good thing that could come out of that is obviously jobs would be created, right? Um, but if you have if it's not obvious to people in California at this point, the people that have been defending their state government all this time and get really angry with me for explaining to them how terrible their government is in their state. When the state is having to take over critical services because the companies that operate in your state can no longer operate in your state because the regulatory environment is so bad that how bad do regulations have to be when a company that could make $1 billion a year in your state says, fuck it, I'm out? Like, who's going to turn down $1 billion? Do you have any idea how bad it has to be for a company to say, you know what, I don't need that $1 billion? $1 billion is a lot of money. Like, that tells you how bad it is. So, I am sure if that happens, that the state will hire out of work refinery people. I'm sure there's plenty of talent from all the refineries that have closed down. So I'm sure there's plenty of talent available to go to work. So it may not be that bad from how they operate them. But the fact that they have to do it just tells you how bad it is. The fact that they would have to do it is the answer to your question. Um, when I was a kid, there was tar on the beach from oil companies in California. A lot of the tar on the beaches in California actually comes from natural oil seeps, where oil just comes up through the seafloor into the water. We were talking about that earlier. I'm sure some of it was from oil companies as well. But if all the oil companies ceased to exist, offshore California and all the wells were shut in, you would still get those tar seeps on the beach. You would still get tar balls on the beach because the oil flows out of the freaking seabed. Merck wants to know, would you vote for a generic Republican over Gavin Newsom? Yes, I would 1000% vote for a generic Republican over Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is the left's version of Donald Trump. He is the left's version. He's no better. He is no better. He thinks the government should control everything and everybody. And so, if you go far enough to the left, where do you end up? You end up on the right. Right? It's just like going around the world. If you go far enough one direction, you end up the other way. If you go far enough right, you end up left. I can't imagine a scenario where I would ever vote for Gavin Newsom for anything ever in my life. I can't. It's not a thing. Just because his process of bankrupting everybody is different than Donald Trump's doesn't mean you don't still all end up bankrupt. The end result is the same. He takes a different path to get there, but you still end up bankrupt. 1000%. Hi, MG. How are you? I cannot imagine Newsom being as bad as Trump. I think Newsom would listen to reason. Um, when has Gavin Newsom ever listened to reason? His state is literally considering buying up refineries that are closing because he's made it so difficult for them to operate. Um, like I said, just because Gavin Newsom is nicer than Donald Trump doesn't mean he's any less dangerous. You have to stop falling for niceties. As a matter of fact, the nicer the politician, uh, the more dangerous they are because you don't see it coming. And Gavin Newsom believes that the government should run everything and everybody, they should run their lives. And he has never shown me that he believes anything but that. And it sucks because when I see Gavin Newsom speak, he seems like an eloquent speaker, good looking guy, seems really smart, but you cannot deny the impact that his policies have. You cannot. You absolutely cannot. He is as dangerous as Donald Trump. He just is as dangerous in a different kind of way. His danger is because he thinks he is so much better and smarter and knows so much more than you. He's going to run your life. He's going to make all these rules, right? We're going to do all these things, and everything's going to live this wonderful life. And then everybody goes broke because he doesn't have a clue that big government doesn't necessarily mean better. Bigger isn't better. Ask Texas. They've been trying it for years. It's not a thing. I wish Gavin Newsom wasn't the way he is, but the fact of the matter, he's an idiot. He's dumber than a post. Sometimes people that sound really smart are really dumb. We're just fortunate that Donald Trump sounds dumb, and so we know he's dumb from the beginning. We actually think Gavin Newsom might not be dumb. That's dangerous because he's very dumb. He's unbelievably dumb. I believe it is against the law for the state to run a private enterprise, but I may be mistaken. States are not allowed to compete against private companies as well. Well, if anybody will change that, it will be Gavin Newsom. If anybody will change that, it would be Gavin Newsom. Um, just because a politician aligns with a lot of the things that you believe politically, it doesn't make them good. That is not what makes a politician good or bad. It's not. If you think that a politician having the same beliefs that you have makes them good, then doesn't that mean that you think that your beliefs should be applied to everyone, right? Um, Essentially, right? I don't believe that. I don't believe that my beliefs should apply to everyone. I think consensus is, consensus among society is what should apply to everyone, not necessarily my beliefs. What's good for me may not be good for Jill, right? That's exactly right, Bill. In my humble opinion, Tim Walz hit the nail on the head when he said, folks, politicians need to mind their own damn business. I can tell you right now, I would vote for Tim Walz 1,000 times before voting for Gavin Newsom would even cross my mind. I would vote for Tim Walz 1,000 times before I would vote for Gavin Newsom. Why is California the fifth largest economy in the state? Well, because they have the population of Canada, right? Gavin Newsom is not the reason that California has the fifth largest economy. They had a fantastic economy long before they had that when Republicans were in control. Is Gavin Newsom? Do we need to give Gavin Newsom for walking into a job in a massive state, which is basically what the capital of the world of technology, in a sense, at least the United States, right? how will recent restrictions by the Trump administration on renewable energy and wind energy affect us over the next 20 years, assuming they remain in effect his 4 years office? I know they're trying to get rid of the production tax credit, the PTC. The production tax credit or tax credits or subsidies that renewable energy companies get for producing renewable energy. Trying to get rid of that. That will be a huge blow to renewable energy. That will it won't bring renewable energy to a halt. And I honestly don't know if he can get rid of it because it was written into the legislation in the Inflation Reduction Act, right? So I don't know that he can get rid of it, but I know he's trying. And I do know that other energy companies, fossil fuel companies in the United States, are probably pushing money, lobbying money towards that effort to try to get that overturned as well. It's no different than when renewable companies lobby Congress to get rid of oil and gas subsidies for their own benefit. Oil and gas companies are going to try to get rid of renewable energy for their benefit. But yeah, he's trying to do that. And if he succeeds, that's the thing. Get this damn puzzle. Losing subsidies for the renewable energy industry would be much more destructive to renewable energy than it would be to the fossil fuel industry. The oil and gas industry is much better positioned to survive subsidies than renewable energy because they produce something that they can sell anywhere on the planet. If you're building a wind farm, you can't sell that electricity to anybody on the planet, right? You're selling it regionally. So just the way everything is structured, it would be bad for renewable energy. If he pulls it off, and I really don't think he can pull it off unless they pass new legislation. But if he pulls it off, it wouldn't be good for. It would definitely slow down progress in the renewable energy space. Daria, thank you so much for your membership gift. Yeah, thank you so much. Trump just yanked all of the military points of connection for cars. I wasn't aware of that. How do you feel about BP dropping renewable goals to focus on oil and gas? So a lot of big companies, a lot of major companies have done this. You know, they came out a few years ago. They said they were going to pump all this money into renewables, you know, and then they lost their ass and it started hurting their share price. And they were like, we can't do this. Our shareholders are not cool with this. So now they're pulling back, right? They had to know that was going to happen. You cannot get into renewable energy and make money quickly. That is a long-term investment, and it takes a long time. Look at Ford. You know, Ford loses billions of dollars a year on EVs, and they're still investing in them because they're still in development phase. They're still spending money on research and development. They're still spending a lot of money retooling and building plants and shit like. So you have to spend a lot of money to get to a place where you make money, and it appears that the shareholders for big oil were just not happy with that. And with reduced investments in big oil across the board due to ESG, they pulled out of it. They pulled out of it. So thank you so much for the gifts. You don't worry about Trump trashing Medicare, Social Security, VA, food stamps, etc. Well, that just hasn't been a topic that's come up yet. I mean, there's 1,000 things we can talk about with the current administration. We just happen to be talking about oil and gas right now. It doesn't mean I don't care about any of the other things he's doing. I'm sorry that I didn't read your mind and address what was on your brain at the moment it popped into your head. But as smart as you might think I am, I don't have that ability to do that. I can't predict what you want me to talk about. I'm Mr. Global. I'm not a political pundit that covers 50,000 things in a live. Right now, we're just talking about energy, right? Because that's what I know about. Um, but you know, if you want to go somewhere and talk about, you know, all of those issues, you can certainly find another live anywhere on the internet where people talk about it 24 hours a day incessantly. But right now, I'm talking about energy. I thought Ford was abandoning the F-150 Lightning, or maybe it was the EV SUV they have. I don't think they've completely abandoned it. I know that last year they stopped production. I think last year they sold, I think, like 7,000 of them, and they had built, like, I don't remember the number they had built, but it was like 40 or 50,000. They had all these Lightnings they couldn't sell. I haven't read that they've completely abandoned it yet, but they've definitely scaled back a lot on it. That's for sure. Um, yeah, I mean, they're losing a lot of money right now, and they're going to have to turn it around eventually, right? Like they can't continue to do that. So I think maybe the question is do we now live in an environment where auto companies can survive years of losses to get to a profit place on EVs? And if you talk about subsidies disappearing, if you talk about, you know, credits and other incentives they get to do that, if you talk about those things disappearing, I just don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know if they can continue or not. They would know better than me. I do know they're going to have to be willing to lose a lot of money for a few years if they want to keep going. Yeah. Donald Trump is proposing the gold card visa program. I'm not familiar with that. That's right, Ryan. One of them is screwing you from the front. One way or another, you're getting screwed. The show Landman, Billy Bob Thornton character, gives a great example of why renewables are not ready. You know, renewables work fine in some places and they don't work fine in others. That's just the truth. Renewable energy works fine in places that don't need a lot of energy. Renewable energy works fine in places that don't have large industrial bases, large manufacturing bases. You know, you go to Iowa, you go to Oklahoma, renewable energy works fine there because guess what? They're not using any juice, right? You start sticking renewable energy in areas that have large spikes in power demand. Now you have a serious problem because it can't keep up. And it's when you really need all that baseload power that we were talking about earlier. Donald Trump is proposing a very unique investment opportunity. He has decided to call it a Ponzi scheme and will really make America great again. Yeah. I'm not investing anything in anything that Donald Trump is promoting. That's not a thing. No. It typically will result in a rug pull, right? How accurate is Landman? It is extremely inaccurate. It is not accurate at all. Um, Edison Motors. Yeah, I've been following Edison Motors for a while. Um, You're not going to promote any of Trump's sneakers on the TikTok shop. I don't think we'll be seeing Donald Trump sneakers on the TikTok shop. How much do those things cost? Well, they like $1,000 or some shit. Um, no, no, I would not be promoting them. In order to promote them, they would have to send me a pair, and I'm not taking any shoes. That's not a thing. Jilly, do you want some Donald Trump sneakers? I could I could see
No,
I could see Jilly wearing some Donald Trump sneakers.
no, I knew you were going to say that. No, you cannot see me wear them because I would not wear them.
Why not? You could walk up and down your street, impress your neighbors.
I would impress my neighbors if I wore them, but I don't want to impress my neighbors because I don't like my neighbors. I only like, certain ones.
Yeah, probably. Comparatively speaking, how would Greenland's oil compare to that found in the USA? Well, we can't answer that question because after 50 years of trying, we haven't successfully produced any oil in Greenland, and so I can't tell you anything at all about Greenland's oil. I've never seen it. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if anybody does. So I can't. Right. Thank you, Smarty Pants. Daria says, I know this is a messed up question, but who thinks Donald Trump is regular or has trouble in the potty department? Please let me ask this. I have no idea. Do you have any thoughts, Jill, on Donald Trump's regularity? You think he's got some Metamucil going on, or what?
So I love that question, Daria. I love it. You can absolutely ask that question. And he has no problems. I mean, they're always changing his diaper, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
Seems like everybody who's around him has that look on his face, that look on their face like that, you know.
Thank you for that question, Daria. I think the people on TikTok agree with you.
And I agree with you.
What is the deal with Donald Trump stabbing Ukraine in the back? What is he after? So, first of all, look, if you follow me, you have seen me say for like the last year um, that he would do this. I told you guys he would do this. I told you he would give up Ukraine for lower gas prices. And that's why he's trying to get lower gas prices. He doesn't care about the people of Ukraine any more than he cares about the people of the United States, right? He does not care one bit. He wants lower gas prices. He thinks gas should be what it was in 1974. He thinks oil should be $25 a barrel. That's what he believes. And if it means the complete destruction of the U.S. energy industry, then so be it, right? That's what he believes. He has said on more than one occasion that oil should be $25 a barrel. He is saying that oil should be half of break even. $25 oil means you're buying oil from OPEC and Russia because you're not getting it in the United States. That's what that means. And if you're fine with that, cool. I'm not. I'm not fine with that. He goes to Germany and he makes fun of Germany for depending on countries that don't like them for their energy Yet at the same time, he's trying to do the same thing to the United States. Thank you, Rusty. I don't think renewable energy is going to get completely dismantled. I just think it's going to, it's going to be climbing uphill for the next few years, and then it'll probably make a bit of a comeback after that, right? Um, that's what I think. Does Ukraine have oil? Ukraine has a lot of natural gas. Ukraine has a lot of natural gas. It's nowhere near the numbers that we have, but they do have significant natural gas reserves. I think they want that. I know Russia wants it, and the United States wants it too. So we'll have to see. David says, wouldn't completing the XL make Canadian oil more marketable and thus more expensive for the United States? Yes. Yes. That is exactly what it will do. 1000%. Uh, yeah. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. Mr. Goatee killed you today. Yeah, me too. Mr. Goatee. Man, love that guy. Love that guy. If the USA removes sanctions on Russia and Europe follows, does that affect our exports? Not a great deal. We still have a lot of people to sell to if you're talking about oil and natural gas. Not a great deal, but Europe is not going to lift any sanctions they might have on Russia, but I don't think it really matters. All the sanctions are based on basically trading in US dollars, right? So I don't know that sanctions from Europe have a lot of teeth, unless I'm missing something in that regard. But I don't expect any Western nations other than the United States to be buying anything from Russia, regardless of what the United States does. You know, Donald Trump goes in there and makes some deal with Russia, ends the war, gives, I don't know, half of Ukraine or a fourth of Ukraine or whatever to Russia, and the whole thing ends. Um, that doesn't mean that all the other countries in the world are cool with that. That doesn't mean that they're cool with that at all. So I don't see uh, that changing a whole lot right there. Right now the European Union is even, I saw yesterday they were having discussions about assisting Ukraine with their military, right? So they're literally discussing escalating to help Ukraine, right? The European Union's at the point where they're like, well, it's obvious the Americans aren't going to do anything but try to give Russia whatever they want. Maybe it's time for us to step up. And they're having those discussions. They're absolutely having those discussions. If the European Union goes into Ukraine, uh, that could affect oil and gas prices. We, you know, we should wait and see. But yeah, if I'm the president of the United States, I would be using our strength to just get Russia out of the country. But Donald Trump is doing the opposite. Um, Donald Trump is approaching this from a point of weakness. I would approach it from a point of strength, and I would tell Vladimir Putin, here's the thing. Um, you can get out, or we can go in, and we're no longer going to just be providing weapons. Um, if we got to go in, we'll go in, but you got to get the fuck out. And I'm pretty sure he would get out. Like, they can't even beat Ukraine. I would be using my allies with NATO to force Russia out of Ukraine. That's what I would be doing, because to me, it's the right thing to do. Jeremy G, betting natural gas for the long term. What are the best stocks to invest in? You just put them right there in your comments. Yeah, you just put them right there in your comments. And what I would do, Jeremy, I would wait. So we just, we're here at the end of winter. Their stocks are a little inflated right now, right? There's probably a better entry point 6 weeks from now. Um, but that's a guess, right? That's a total guess. But yeah, EQT, Southwest Energy, Antero Resources. I don't study those stocks individually enough to know which one is the best, but I can tell you they're all pretty good. They're heavy natural gas players. They're in a really good spot. They're in a really good space. Um, so I would find something on sale, you know. But hard to lose money on those stocks right now with the way natural gas is moving, out in the next few years. It's a good safe bet, you know. You're really picking at this point. You would really be picking which one would make you the most money. They're all going to make you money, right? Which one's going to make you the most money? Figure that out. But you named a couple of the best ones there. Really good companies. Is it strange that Canada was in on that EU roundtable? I thought it was pretty interesting. I thought it was pretty interesting, and I thought it was, I heard some of the conversation, and the way they were talking was basically that Canada was a part of the EU. That their words, not mine. Now, one gentleman that was speaking, he said everyone here is part of the EU, and Justin Trudeau shook his head and said yes. So Canada is definitely on board with EU and whatever they think moving forward with Ukraine and Russia. Thanks, Rusty. According to Goatee and Pig Dick, we didn't import. I should have read that word before I read it out loud. We didn't import any oil in 2020. Yeah. 2.75 billion barrels imported in 2020 equals zero to Trump supporters. Well, Daria, they were referring to how they are going to approach the conflict in Ukraine. They were having a discussion about intervening in Ukraine with their militaries. And he said, we need to be considering a military intervention. And then he basically asked everyone at the table if they were with the EU on that. And Justin Trudeau said yes, right? So you could potentially see a scenario where Canada, our closest ally and trading partner, who Donald Trump is currently going after for whatever reason, um, is doing the complete opposite of what, because Donald Trump has decided this is his problem to solve. Is doing the complete opposite of what their closest ally and trading partner wants to do. He's in there trying to hand the country to Russia, and Canada's in there, offering up military boots on the ground, which is something the United States has still not offered. So yeah, it's kind of wild. You can kind of see how, like in a worst case scenario, how all this could play out into a much larger conflict. When you have a lot of nations getting together with differing opinions and talking about going in with their militaries, this is the kind of conversations that result in much larger, massive conflicts, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll go that far. I hope it doesn't, but it's certainly not out of the realm of reality. Musk wants to be the first trillionaire and doesn't care how he does it. I don't think Musk is going to make it to trillionaire status. So much of his wealth is tied up in equities that are, going to just lose so much value in the future. How much money has he lost? How many billions of dollars has he lost in the last month in just Tesla shares? If he wants to be a trillionaire, he's going the wrong way, If he wants to be a trillionaire, it's going the wrong way. All right, folks, it's 5 o'clock. That means I got to go. Thanks, everyone, so much for coming in. 330 people on TikTok. Thank you guys so much. What do we get? 267 people on Substack. And however many on YouTube. Huh?
There is 58 on YouTube right now.
58. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget, Thursday, 2 o'clock. Robert Rapier, senior energy contributor for Forbes magazine. He is an expert in refining. He will be on. I will be interviewing him. We're going to talk about a lot of things regarding Canada. I can already tell you that's going to be a subject. But he'll be here. It'll be a good time. Tomorrow, so far, normal live, unless I find someone to come in last minute. Thanks, everyone, so much for coming in. Jilly, thank you so much for your help.
Thanks, everyone, for the gifts.
Thank you guys on Substack. Good seeing you guys come in, showing your support. Thanks, everybody.